So for my first page, I started with natural packaging from my first year, where we made repeat patterns. So I made some ink and bleach designs and created the patterns on the top. And from this, I cut out little paper dresses that are inspired by the Rococo era and Marie Antoinette. And I like all of the differences of the dresses. One's more long, one's more short, one has more on the arms, etc. And I like the way I've added little shoes to go with the dresses, and I think that just adds a little nice touch and extra detail. And I've also added a lot of hair, which is very inspired by the Marie Antoinette, and they're all different, and I really like that because I wanted each doll to be different. And I think it's a really good a good start page for my portfolio, as it's one of my favorites. This is my skirt project from pattern cutting page, and I started with the mood board, and which I recreated to match better with the actual final product, and created some skirt designs which matched better with the final page. And I think the colours and the designs match a lot better with the final skirt than what I previously did. I also wanted to include the pattern cutting part of the skirt, so I added the patterns used to create the skirt with like annotations on it. I did a photo shoot for my final skirt, which I picked my favourite one on the bottom, and also a look like an underneath look of the skirt, which links to the black and yellow theme on the underskirt. And I also included fabric swatches, which I'm lucky that I still had them, to go with the skirt to add some 3D like elements to the page, so it wasn't just paper. And I think this page really shows the journey of the skirt, which I really like. This is the lookbook page, and I printed all pages on A5, and I went with this layout with the front page on the top and the back page on the bottom, with all of the pages inside all together. And I think it really shows how the lookbook will look, and I really like the colours that I've used for it, and I think the layout is just really clear, so you can read it, so it's readable. And I think it's a really simple page, but I think it's really fun because of the way I've done the lookbook. It looks really fun, and I really like it. So yeah, I used that lookbook page as the page break between the skirt page and this page, which is the top page from the colour project that we did in pattern cutting. And I've included a mood board on the top left, which is the original mood board that I used, which I included. On the right of that is an artist research page, which is quite small. Underneath, I've done a selection of design ideas which link a lot better to the final design, as before they weren't so linked. So I thought that was good. On the right of that is a miniature sample of a cut pattern, where I've put like some images which were heavily inspired for the final design in between it, which I thought was cool. So it was like opening with shapes coming through. Across from that is the sample made from that pattern, which looks quite cool. And then to the right of that is the fashion flat that I created from my final design. And I think the colours are really cool. And under that, I have the final top with the fabric swatches that I used for the top. And on the right, I added buckles, which I thought was really cool because I wanted to add more 3D elements and something was missing. So I cut off these buckles from my toile, and I think it looks really cool. And overall, I think it's laid out quite nicely, and all the colours are linked, so I think it shows the creation of the top really well. I didn't use a page to break up these different projects because I thought that the colour top was linked to the color project, so I kept them together. So the next page is the color project, so the first page for the color project where we made a full garment. And I've included a scanned image from my sketchbook, which has a lot of like really nice colors, which links to the actual like whole portfolio page, and to show like my research into the actual designing. On the right is a mood board, which is quite small. I do wish it was bigger, but it's okay. The colors really link well. Under that we have a sample of a watercolor dye experiment, and I thought add a sample to link with physical like textile experiments. On the left is my color scheme that I've gone with the design ideas inspired by that color scheme. And I think I did the designs in watercolor, as I thought it linked to the experiment above using like the bleeding of the dyes. And in my mood board I've included like a little watercolor splat in the corner, if you can see. I think the colours really link well to the whole board, and I think the designs are really fun. And yeah, this is the second colour page, which shows the construction and actually the final image. So at the top we have more refined ideas to show like my thought process of designing. So I've got the final ideas there, and they've got some annotations around it of how I would create it. Underneath I've got the colour swatches I used for the final garment, and next to the actual final image I've got some scanned images from my book showing digital development and scales of toiling. And I wanted to include this because I thought it would show like my process of creating it and the construction part of the project, which I thought was really cool. And I've got my final images of my finished garment, and I really like the position or the pose that the model's doing. And I think it really shows the style of my final garment. And I've included the back of like a smaller image because I thought it was less important than the front, but I really like this page. This is my photography page, which is a page break between the color project and the sustainable project, which is the next page. This page I printed off my final prints for photography in year one. There are 6 images, and it starts from the top left going through a journey to the bottom right, and they all have a collective theme, which is distortion, which is the text on the right, which is like sideways. And I thought adding text would give more context to the page, and I really like the color scheme through this, like this bluey to a brown to these black and white bluey images to a vibrant blue. It kind of goes through this like journey from the first image to the last image, and I think it's really cool. This is the start of the sustainable pages. This is page 1, and it is showing the conceptual ideas before deciding on one idea for my project. On the top left is a mood board. This is from my project, and on the right is some design ideas. Below I've got a sample from my garments with the pocket there on the right. On the left is another design, and on the left of that is another sample of like my planning to show my planning of construction to get to a final idea. It's kind of supporting these two textile like samples are supporting the final garment idea on the bottom, which I think it shows a really like obvious concept idea to my final garment idea at the bottom. And I like the way all of the color is all spaced out, and I think it's laid out really like well, and it's easy to understand, I think. And this is the second page to the sustainable project, and it's literally just the final image in the center with a supporting smaller image, with the diary of making like construction pages surrounding the two images to show like the context of how I got from nothing to the image, and the pages kind of support that in a way. And on the left I have a supporting fashion flat to show how I know how to construct the garment, and yeah, shows the digital aspect of what goes into making a garment. And I think it's very simple, not a lot going on, and I think it cuts to the chase of like the final image. This is another page break, and it's a draping page, to show what like I can do with just a piece of fabric, and it shows four separate designs of the front, back, and two sides in each row, and it's just a simple line kind of layout, and I like the simplicity of each image. It's just I edited a dummy with the draped fabric onto a like studio photography background with the paper that's rolled, and you can see on the top it's a bit black, so it shows it a bit, because the background before was it wasn't a very good background, so I edited it onto this background, which you can see. And I plan, this isn't a finished page, but I plan to stick it down with spray mount with all of, on the top left there's an example that there will be tape going across each of the pages to make it look like it was the temporary stick on the page, but it's in fact stuck down, and quite, it just looks more like my actual process of like designing. I would use tape, and it just shows a bit of me really. This is the start of the architecture pages, and this is the pattern cutting architecture page where we designed a dress. And on the page we've got a mood board on the right, and on the left of that are some design ideas which I edited onto the background of a selection of images from the chosen theme of the college architecture. And underneath I've got like a toile, like showing the construction part of how I got from just constructing an idea to the fully fleshed out design on the top, which could act as a fashion flat, with the textile samples to show my textile exploration, which surround the final product, which is the dress on the bottom right, which is a final photography shoot showing my final dress. And I think the whole board shows somewhat of a colour scheme, and grey is the main colour scheme that I went with. And yeah, I think it shows the project quite clearly. This is the group architecture project, which is another architecture project, but it was more textiles and kind of more bonkers kind of take on architecture, where we were put in a group. And on the top we have our group mood board that my group made, and on the right is the finalized design idea of our group's garments, which that is what I drew. Under that we have, I wanted to show, because I hadn't done this before on the other pages, is bills of materials and more of a tech pack. So I have a laid out page under the final collection drawings of bills of materials of all the fabric that we planned to buy, and on the right I put the fabric swatches to show what they came out and looked like. Under the mood board I have an image from our fashion show, because I thought that would be cool to include some imagery from our fashion show where I can talk about that in the interview or something like that. And below is like a whole look of all four garments, and I like how in the drawn designs, it's literally the same as the final garment photography shoot, which I really like. And I think the colours really tie well together, and the red carpet, I don't think it's off-putting. I think it kind of draws you into that image. And I think the architecture of the buildings behind in that background picture actually links to the architecture of the project, which I really liked. I think it shows the journey of our group project. This is the second page of the architecture group project, which is just showing my garment specifically. The top left image is a design drawing, just like a experimental drawing to get into flow of the design ideas I wanted to be making, which links to diagonally below the digital illustration is some design ideas to show how that top left drawing links to those drawings. Above those drawings are my digital illustration of my final garment to show more range that I can digitally draw, and I thought it was quite cool to show that skill as well. On the left of that is a mood board that I made for my specific garment, which is on the left of that are the fabric samples folded under it, which I thought was really cool, and the color scheme works really well all around the board. Under that is my final garment shown on the runway, which is really cool, and the red again isn't off-putting. I think it draws you into that image, and it's like the centerpiece of the page. And on the right I wanted to do a sample, so this is a sample of the folded draping piece that is seen on my garment. This is my second photography page. It is in progress at the moment, but this is my fully fleshed out plan for the page, showing my colour project garment through photography of movement. So I really like the layout. I think it's plain and simple, but I think it's effective due to we've got the main image on the left, which is my favorite image, with the supporting images where it shows a journey of how I went through these three images on the right to get to the final image on the left, which is my favorite one. And I've also got a background little image which isn't very clear, but it is an accidental shot that I shot from the photo shoot, and I thought it would be quite cool to do some layering, as without it kind of looked a bit boring, and I didn't want it to look boring, and I think it looked quite cool, and it ties in with the color scheme. This is my white shirt plan of a page. I plan to have my mood board at the top with all this texture and drawing on, with my final photography shoot of my shirt on an A3 page. However, I might have to shrink it down to A4 because I need to add my design ideas to show my journey from a mood board to designing to constructing the actual garment. So I might need to shrink that final photo down. I also want to include the patterns I made to create my final shirt, and I've only done the shirt pattern pieces as I think that was the main part of my shirt, was the sleeves. So that is the plan of my white on white page. Not white on white, the white shirt page. This is this is page 1 of white on white, which I didn't use a page break because I thought the white shirt would link quite well with this project. So I'm linking it together in a way, but we've got a mood board on the top right, which will be A4, and under that is going to be research, do like a little mind map of silhouette or something that is linked to my design research. On the left of that are a bunch of initial ideas, which I just need to reprint because it printed on yellow paper. Above that, I want to have an array of different white fabrics I could use to show my my design process basically. On the right of the page, I've got potential samples, like different textile techniques that I could potentially use for the final garment to show like my thought process. This is the second white on white page. I plan to do a photo shoot of my final garment with like a zoomed in image next to it, or like to show the back or like the left or the right, different like angles of it, because I think it would be really interesting. I wanted to include a final fashion illustration to show my drawing plan for it and how it turned out. And then a little fashion flat at the bottom with some fabric samples of like the samples I ended up using to add some 3D-ness to the board. This is a page break between projects. This is an illustration page with, I have a little mood board at the top to show where it started and what I came out with. It's going to be an illustration of of two people, to link to the two lead actors in the film. So two illustration pieces of them singing at a concert, which I'm really excited to do. I just need to draw it basically, and that's the plan for that page. So this is the ending final pages of this portfolio, and I think it's strong. So this is my own project page, where I've chosen to do a play called The Woman in Black, which I saw, and on the left I've chosen to link it to steampunk, a subgenre of the Victorian era, which I thought the Victorian era linked quite well with the Edwardian era of in aligning with The Woman in Black. So on the left I have a steampunk Victorian clothing mood board, basically showing colours and style, looking into menswear and stuff like that. And on the right I've got a character analysis of the actor that's in The Woman in Black, like not the actor that plays the character, there is a character called the actor that plays Arthur Kipps in the play. So I analysed him and what he wears, how he acts. Underneath I've got a set of design ideas of like suits and waistcoats, and that is linked to steampunk to add a bit of like a style to it. And underneath I have my fabric samples, which I thought would link really well with colours and fabric texture on this yarn which I thought was very interesting to do. And on the left is this faux leather sample, which I want to do embroidery onto from that little image on top, like little cogs to link to the steampunk aesthetic. This page works with the previous page and is a final design idea of the costume for the actor, and I have done a watercolor drawing of the final garment with on the right some fabric samples of what I would use. So like a little just array of fabric samples next to it to link what the fabric would be. And under that is a rough sketch of how it goes from this big drawing, this costume, to the end of the play where he would wear that costume, which is the same costume, it's just more tatty and more like he's lost the coat and stuff. So it shows like a bit of a journey from this design idea to that design idea. And I think this page shows like a really good journey from the design process to the final like design of what I would want him to wear. And I think this is quite a strong like project to end on my own project, because I really love doing it. So I thought that would be a really good ending to the portfolio.